Okay. Okay. I better see where I'm shooting this thing. Okay. Yeah, so there is female objectification in the video. But it's not like American female objectification. We show a lot more skin. I mean, that is the way Korean, even Korean strippers, as I told, I've never seen a Korean stripper. My wife tells me about these things. Why is it that my wife has been to all these strip joints and I've never been to one in my whole life? Why is that? I don't understand it either. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm the guy, right? I'm supposed to go to the strip joints. Not the lady's not supposed to go to the strip joints. Anyway, she would go to Korean strip joints and they never take all their clothes off. They'll take, they'll have tights on underneath their clothes, or a t-shirt on, and they'll have their bra on the outside of their. Anyway, they'll take the bra off, but they don't take anything else off. They never show themselves completely, as confusing as that may be. Anyway, we saw a lot more clothes than we normally see in any American video. If this were an American video, there would be cleavage, there would be a lot more skin. Probably. I'm just guessing. Okay. Female objectification. The other thing was, when was the last time you saw a man sitting on a toilet? In a video, I don't care where it is, when was the last time? On television. In the old days, once upon a time in the United States, on television, even if it was a sitcom like the Brady Bunch, there's no toilet in the Brady Bunch bathroom. And they would have scenes in the bathroom where the girls are talking back and forth, or maybe one of the boys is standing in the doorway. I mean, it's not like they're sitting on the toilet. They don't even show the toilet. That's how bad it is, and we don't even, but in Korea it's not that way. When I was in Korea, we were driving past a bus stop, and this lady had to go to the bathroom, so she squatted in the gutter, and she urinated in the gutter, right there. Now that's not something that you'd see in the United States. You know, when you got to take a whiz, you're not going to squat in the gutter, but this is very common. A little boy had to pee, and of course they don't have public bathrooms in Korea. So the mother, it was just like an 18-month-old, and she held him, and she pulled his pants down, and he peed into the gutter. She's holding him out into traffic, and he's urinating in the gutter. Okay, so those bodily functions are not the same in Korea as they are in the United States. Here, we pretend that we don't fart, but in Korea, okay. And if you gotta go, you gotta go. Karen my wife, was climbing the mountain, and she, this is on the path, and so she reaches up to pull herself up this one step, and she reaches on the step, and there was a pile of human feces right there on the step. They tell you when you go there are public bathrooms there, but there are very few and far between. If you go to the gas station, they don't have a bathroom, or they have a bathroom just for the people that work there. But if you go to a public toilet, they don't have toilet paper. You have to carry your own toilet paper, and you can't flush the toilet paper down the commode because it's wasteful. So you wipe yourself and throw it in the waste bin. Toilets around the world. Let's talk about toilets around the world. I'm sorry, that's the way it is.
I heard that in Iraq, like some of the soldiers that come back over, they were saying that people use the river as their toilet, so they'll see like feces and everything floating down.
Oh yeah. We'll see. Okay. Europeans used to do the same thing, and we did that in the United States until we decided that we were contaminating everybody. Okay, so I know. How stupid is that? Anyway, okay, let's watch the next video. This is going to be fun. You want to talk about this is a video called Gentleman. So That should be a nice video, I hope. All right, I watched it this morning. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but there's a couple places that I want you to see. We're talking about Korean culture and how it's very, very much different from the United States and very much different from Western culture. Of course, it's got a really good beat to this. There's a new dance out there. Okay. Okay. Wait a minute. Another culture. Okay. Kind of disgusting, wasn't it? Okay. But is it disgusting for Koreans? That's the question. I guess that's the big question. Or is Psi just what we call scatological? And it means, it has to do with bowel movements. Scatological, scat is feces. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, there were a couple times in there that they had bathroom jokes. Kinda, right? The guy had to go really bad and he got on the elevator and Psi got on the elevator and punched all the buttons and laughed, thought it was the funniest thing in the world. The guy's dying or whatever. Did you see the other one then? Who would ever come up with the idea of farting into their hand and then rubbing it in somebody's face? Who would think about that? It's Korea. It's another culture. It's just another culture. Okay. That's the point I want to make. Fairly disgusting. Not the bathroom part. The farting in your hand and rubbing it in somebody's face. Yeah. Where I come from, they do that all the time. Thanks, Jeff. I was wondering.
Oh no. One of my friends did that to me. So, like, yeah.
One of your friends does that kind of stuff?
No. He did that to me when I was he was 6 and I was 7. He did it for no reason. I'm like, why'd you do that? Like, he thought that was the funniest thing. Like, so yeah.
I would never even think about it.
Yeah.
I guess that's me. I'm an old man. Maybe if I were your age. I would. Okay, different culture, different ideas, right? A little bit more scatological than we are. They, as far as bathrooms are concerned, different ideas. Some people have public bathrooms. In the United States, of course, if you all over Europe, all over the Western world, if you go to a restroom, which they call a water closet, you go to a restroom, then there are each toilet is there's something around it so that everybody's not watching everybody else. However, in the United States military, their latrines didn't have any partitions. So you could all sit on the toilet together and have long conversations. As exciting as that might be. Okay. Okay. So we are talking about bathrooms, and things have changed since we have come up with the concept of bathrooms. Does everybody have the same idea about what everything's supposed to look like? Obviously not. And this is a cultural perspective. It's a Korean cultural perspective. They're just a little bit more scatological than we are in the United States. This is funny to them. The guy with diarrhea that is trying to get to a toilet, and it's funny to make him shit his pants, I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, it's a different culture and different ideas. One of the things we're going to talk about is sex, but we're only going to talk about it for a very short period of time. But we're going to talk about it as far as another culture is concerned. Not everybody does things the same. Your ideas about ideas about sexuality different from Western men. Is that correct? From Westerners, and that was one of the conflicts when Westerners first started encroaching. As they moved west, they kept running into the same problems, that their ideas were different from everybody, from the tribes that they were coming in contact with. The tribes that had come in contact with the Spanish, they had different ideas than the individuals that had never come in contact with anybody before. Even Lewis and Clark, when they went up into Montana, most of the tribes had come in contact with French traders up in Canada. So as Westerners encroached farther and farther west, things changed, or ideas changed. Wait a second. I don't remember. All right. There we go. I'm right here. Okay. We're talking about subcultures in the United States. And some of the subcultures we looked at before. There is Jewish culture, which is a subculture in the United States. Most people in the United States are Christian. Judaism is a minority religion, but the Jewish faith, interestingly, if you talk to somebody who's Jewish, they consider themselves a separate race from everybody else because they're the chosen people of God. Anyway, the Jewish culture is one of the subcultures in the United States. And as I said last time, there are more Jewish people in the United States than there are in Israel, which is the Jewish homeland. Urban culture, of course, is different from rural culture. But of course, if you're a ruralist, if you're from the country, if you're a farmer like I am, I live out in the middle of a cornfield. I'm not an urban person. Gay and lesbian culture, and of course, this is expanded now. It's no longer just gay and lesbian, but it's also transgender, bisexual, LGBT, transsexual, and what's Q? Queer, yeah, it stands for queer. And then 2S, I guess. Some people put the 2S, the two spirits for American Indians who are gay. High socioeconomic status culture is completely different. Of course, we're running into that now with the Trump administration because he's putting a lot of very wealthy individuals in his cabinet. And it's the first time we've ever seen anything like this. More billionaires in the cabinet. And why would a billionaire want to join the administration? Betsy DeVos, her husband has $3 billion. Who would have thought about all this stuff? The vegan culture, the vegetarian culture, millennial culture, that's you guys. I'm guessing you're all millennials. I'm a baby boomer and you guys are all millennials. The Harvard culture is completely different. We talked about this last time. The Mac user culture, people that use Macs, obviously I do. This is my own home computer. I have used PCs. I like Macs much, much better. You've got an iPhone. Some people, everything is Apple. Every piece of technology they have is Apple. And of course, if everything is Apple, then I think you can tie everything together. I think you can. I don't know how PCs work. The Trekkie culture is not that big. But of course, Star Trek is coming back. In the fall, we've got a new Star Trek coming back. I'm so excited. I don't know. How many iterations have we had of Star Trek? 4? Is this the 4th one? They had the original that only lasted for 2 years. I don't remember. Anyway, okay. So we're talking about subcultures. Members of subcultures may not live near each other, but their members live in a shared context. They communicate with each other. They maintain norms that distinguish them from other groups and have some common practices and ideas. And I was looking for a subculture, and the one that I found were of course, My Little Pony subculture. There are people out there who dress with My Little Pony, this and that and the other. They dye their hair, obviously. You can see My Little, and they call themselves bronies. I don't know what that means. I don't know. I'm not a part of that subculture. Is anybody a brony? Have I touched a nerve anywhere? No? Okay. A brony. Okay. I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh at them. They're very serious about this, of course. What could be more important than My Little Pony? Can you think of anything more important than and I have no idea why these guys are dressed up with unicorn shirts on. I don't know. It's not just in Japan. The Japanese do all kinds of interesting things. The Japanese are kind of interesting. Remember, it's a very, very crowded culture. So the Japanese live more in their minds than they do outside because it's so damn crowded. And it's a collectivist society. So they have to do everything the right way. They have to dress the right way. In school uniforms, they've always worn school uniforms. It's not like the United States where you get to put on your Air Jordans. They have a special shoe that they wear. The girls all dress the same. Everybody at school looks exactly alike. So when they're not in school, when they're not being regimented by society, then they do all kinds of interesting things. They live in here as much as possible. So this is very real in Japan. You'll see people with pink hair and yellow hair and whatnot, orange hair, whatever, blue hair. That's very, very common over in Japan, and they'll dress like an anime character, as confusing as that is, which is kind of interesting. We may get into anime later, but anime is really quite fascinating. Each person has their own unique history of individual experiences that has shaped their views. I have a brother that was just like the rest of the family. My family's fairly liberal. I grew up with a father who was a Republican and a mother who was a Democrat. He was a Hooverian Republican, which means nothing to you guys. And she was a Rooseveltian Democrat. Well, these are the presidents who were the presidents before and during the Depression. And of course, my parents were that old that they were that old. But anyway, my dad was a staunch Republican all of his life until Ronald Reagan messed him. He was a banker, and Ronald Reagan changed the banking laws, and he was pissed. I've never seen him like that before, and he switched parties, and he didn't vote for Reagan the second time. He was so upset. And of course, what happened at the end of Reagan's term?
Shot.
Oh, he got shot in the beginning.
Oh.
The savings and loan fiasco. Remember, we lost billions and billions of dollars. People lost all their savings. You guys are way too young to remember any of this. This is in like 1998. Yeah, 1998. Yeah, savings and loan horror occurred, and it was because of the banking rules. It was because of the changes that they had made. I have a brother who was just as liberal as the rest of us. Everybody in my family is relatively liberal, except my dad, who became liberal after Reagan. We're relatively liberals. My sister was a founding member of NOW, National Organization for Women. It's the first feminist group that in the United States. Real liberal. I marched for civil rights. I marched against the war in Vietnam, and then I went over and fought with them in Vietnam, as much sense as that makes. But I have a brother that went to Afghanistan in 2005, and he came back a Nazi. He came back, he's just not just conservative. This guy is bad. I mean, he's got some really, really strange ideas. And it's because of his experiences in Afghanistan. And he won't talk about it. We can't figure out what converted this guy from one idea to the next. Anyway, but it did. I mean, I can't even talk to him anymore. My goodness, he thought Hillary Clinton was the devil with horns and a tail. My goodness, I don't think she has horns and a tail. She's a human at least. She may be a crook. I'm not even sure she's a crook. I haven't quite figured that one out. All of these individual differences lead some people to reflexively embrace certain cultural messages, staunchly react to other cultural messages, and largely ignore some other cultural messages. And this is happening right now in the United States. People that are Trump supporters, it doesn't matter what he does, they are 100% behind him. And even if you look at his popularity rates, wow, they're in the 30s. But with people that voted for Trump, his popularity is in the 90s. So it doesn't really matter what he says about, I don't know, Charlottesville. What he said during Charlottesville, it doesn't matter. They don't care. They ignore something, and we all do this. I mean, I'm not just picking on conservatives. Liberals did the same thing with President Obama. He could do no wrong as far as they were concerned. While other people are looking at conservative media and they're seeing all this horrible stuff that Obama is doing. He's a Muslim. Wasn't born in the United States. He was a socialist, and he was a Nazi at the same time, which is almost impossible because they're like 180 degrees away from each other. Anyway, so they were ignoring all this stuff, and we all do this. We ignore the stuff we don't like, and we adhere to the stuff we do like. And politics is a good example of our culture, how we accept some things and don't accept others. I'm going to talk about something that is that you may find disgusting, and I apologize before we talk about it, but we need to understand that some cultures are different from ours. We've already talked about the scatological aspect of Korea, right? Toilet jokes are funny over there. They're like 13-year-old boys telling fart jokes. That's Korea. This is not quite that. This is a little bit more disgusting. This is a tribe of people that live in, and they've been isolated for an extended length of time. They live in Papua New Guinea, and Papua New Guinea is right here. It's right above Australia. Indonesia controls the rest of this. This is Irian Jaya on the other side, and this is Papua New Guinea. This is where the headhunters come from. Nobody had ever been there until World War II. And we tried to put a military base there. The Japanese invaded. We tried to kick them out so that we could build an airstrip so that we could bomb Japan. And so Western world, the Eastern world first came in contact with the people of Papua New Guinea during World War II. And that's the first time these guys had ever seen anybody that didn't look like this. Lots of headhunters. These guys did all kinds of interesting things. Now, what I want you to imagine is when Western people first started encroaching on the natives, the indigenous peoples of the Americas, right? Because the indigenous people weren't Christian, they killed them. They did all kinds of interesting things. They tried to change their culture. They tried to change everybody's culture. And this was going on until the 1970s. They were still sending people to boarding schools, and they were forcing them to change. Okay, this is Papua New Guinea. And Papua New Guinea didn't see any Westerners or Easterners until World War II. So we have only had contact with these individuals for the last 70 years, 75 years. Okay? All right. This is a tribe called the Sambia. And they live in Papua New Guinea, as I said before. This is a very violent place. There are different tribes of these individuals, and they were headhunters. And of course, in order for you to become a man, one of the things in select tribes, the way for you to become a man is you had to kill somebody, cut their head off, and shrink their head. Okay, and they were headhunters. And sometimes they would eat the brains, and sometimes they would eat the warriors' bodies in order to gain their... Okay, that's the old story. But we have been there now, and we have seen these individuals. We have dealt with these individuals. And now we know exactly how they become warriors. Okay? It's a little different from Western now. We don't do this kind of stuff. Different culture. Okay, so because of the constant warfare, warriors are extremely important. Warriors keep your tribe from being destroyed, or for them taking all your women and impregnating them. So we need men, right? We need to build men. It's like the Marines. You know, they need a few good men. Well, these are the Sambia, and they need to make their males as masculine as they possibly can. So how do they do it? You ready? How do they do it? The Sambia believe that femaleness is an innate natural essence. Maleness must be cultivated. So you're born a female. Everybody is a little bit of a sissy. If you're a male, you're a sissy. Right out of the womb. Boys are seen as existing in a female world and are contaminated by their mother's wombs. It is very important to rid boys of feminine habits and transform them into brave men. So how do we transform them into brave men? Remember, the Spartans did this kind of stuff. The Greeks did this kind of stuff. The Athenians, this was all over Greece, that they were trying to create warriors. They needed soldiers in their armies. And these guys are the same way. They're trying to protect themselves. So they have to create warriors. Initiation practices are used to transform boys into men. Obvious. I mean, it was the same way in the American military. They would initiate people. Boot camp was hard. People died in boot camp. They pierced their septum, which is the cartilage in your nose. They pierced the septum, and as you saw before, wait a second, as you saw before, they would stick things through there, and that would show that they were men, because they pierced their septum. That's not so bad. They would thrash the boys with sticks. That's not so bad. Initiation also includes older men giving gerundu to boys, achieved through boys performing oral sex on the men. Semen is seen as physical basis of gerundu. Males are seen as incapable of producing semen without the initiation. In other words, you can't reproduce, you can't produce a child unless you go through this initiation. And this initiation involves oral sex between the boys and men. They have to get the semen of the warriors. And if they get the semen of the warriors, this will make them men. And if they don't do this, then they can't reproduce. And of course, they can't protect the tribe because they won't be warriors. Okay. Sorry. I haven't finished it. Throughout one's life, a male engages in ingestion of semen from around age 7 to 15. They receive fellatio to impart semen at 15, and this goes until they're 17. Heterosexual contact with a wife after age 17, and of course they will still have some homosexual contact with these young boys between the ages of 5 and 7. Sambian males thus go through homosexual, bisexual, and heterosexual phases throughout their lives. Oh, see, you missed all the good part.
I will.
Okay. I know, it's a lot more extensive than I'm putting in here. Sexuality is seen as a core identity in Western cultures. It's more dynamic, of course, in Sambian cultures. But of course, the Sambians aren't the only ones. There's another group, and I can't even remember their name, but there's another group. They impart Jerome Du in another way. They have anal intercourse with the boys. And of course, they think that Sambians are crazy because they get the semen in the wrong place. That's the idea. So one group has anal intercourse with the young boys, and the other group has oral intercourse with the young boys. They're creating warriors. Now, as Westerners, we find this disgusting. It's pedophilia. We would arrest these guys, right? Yeah. It's not right. But as far as their culture is concerned, it's their culture. Should we go in there and try to change them? Your decision. Should we go in there and try to change them? No more anal intercourse with 5-year-olds, no more oral intercourse with 5-year-olds. What do you think? It's another culture. The Cheyenne used to take a maiden, and on the first day of spring, they would sacrifice that's where the star quote comes from, the morning star. When they first saw the morning star, they would sacrifice that maiden. And then they would, and that protected the tribe. The gods would honor it, but it's a tribe. Another way of doing that. Yeah. Some tribes were cannibals. The Tonkawa, down in Texas, Oklahoma, they were cannibals. And when the Spanish found that out, they just went berserk and tried to kill them all off. They almost did, but they weren't quite successful. Comanches tried to help them, of course. Comanches are always killing somebody. Anyway, should we try to change this? Yes or no? Should the UN go in there and, I don't know, machine gun them all or something? All those nasty men?
Isn't that basically creating genocide?
Yeah, of course, but you're killing off evil. Or is it evil?
It's not evil. It's evil to us, but not to them. It's
Of course not. So what do you think? Should we try to change their culture and make it better? Make it more Western? Loaded question, isn't it? Because
Don't
that's
Catholics do the same though?
exactly. Of course they did.
Oh,
yeah.
Cultures kind of out there.
Yeah. My way's the right way. Your way must be, that makes your way the wrong way because you don't do it the same way that I do. Yeah, it's what Westerners did when they came to the Americas. They tried to change everything. One of the ways they tried to change everything was to send you guys to boarding school. So you're probably not your parents, but your grandparents and your great-grandparents. All these people had to go to boarding school, and when they went to boarding school, they cut their hair. You know that famous picture of the teenager after he'd been to boarding school for a year. His hair's short. He's wearing the right clothes. Maybe he speaks English now. You know, was that right or was that wrong? Okay, so we need to look at cultures. We have to accept cultures as an encapsulated structure. Now this gets really tough because around the world there are people that circumcise females, and sometimes when they circumcise females, they don't just cut away the labia; they also cut away the clitoris, so she can't have any sexual pleasure because they consider women more adamant sexual animals than men are. Women are hornier than men. That's the way they consider it. So they circumcise the clitoris, literally. And there are people around the world, or people in the Western world, people in the Eastern world, that are trying to stop that. And the question is this right or wrong? This is a tough one, because I'm not arguing with my wife. She'll punch me. She's a much better soldier than I am. I don't want to get hurt, and I don't want to make anybody mad. This is a tough one. I mean, it's almost like, allowing rape. Well, in the Muslim world, rape is a punishment. And if a woman gets raped, in some places, they will stone her to death because somebody raped her. In India, over the summer, in a bus, a woman was raped and murdered in the bus. And it took months before they decided to prosecute the 7 men that raped her. But now they have. But they were debating as to whether they should prosecute them, because rape's not, they don't see rape the same as everybody else does. It's all cultural. I know this is really kind of strange. Does everybody have the same ideas that we do? No, of course not. I mean, it's like the Blackfeet arguing with the Dene. Different cultures. You're doing it wrong. You don't dance right. Well, it's like going to a powwow up north. You know, you're out on the plains. You're Fort Belknap or Fort Peck. They all dance clockwise. You go up into the mountains with the Salish and Kootenai, and they dance counterclockwise. Yeah, they dance backwards. Exactly. That's dance backwards. And here's the funny thing. I went to a powwow in Tama, Iowa. They're the Meskwaki, the fox. You've heard of the Sac and fox. They're the fox. They dance both ways. And sometimes they'll dance like a snake. Okay. Wait a minute. The snakes, that's the Shoshone, right? Oh, yeah, they're the snakes. They fall in the snakes. Anyway. Which is right, which is wrong? Obviously, if you guys dance clockwise, that's the right way to dance.
When my dad dances, because he dances in powwows, he'll go to the Flathead Reservation during early powwow, and they're all dancing this way. And my dad's like, I refuse to dance that way, Mom, so he dances the right way.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it's funny, but you know, they respect him,
Sure.
so that, you know, that's
Right.
his way and his belief. So, used to be kind of like an issue.
On Fort Belknap is where the Nez Perce ended up with Chief Joseph, if you've ever heard of that guy. Anyway, every year they have a Chief Joseph powwow on the Fort Belknap reservation. Well, the Nez Perce are mountain people. And of course, the Gros Ventre and the Assiniboine are plains people. So half of the powwow was danced clockwise and the other half was danced counterclockwise. And it's tough too, because, well, you're used to going this way, and all of a sudden you're dancing the other direction. It's not easy. And of course, when they have competitions, all the Nez Perce win when they're dancing backwards or dancing clockwise. Okay. So we understand that sometimes cultures have really odd ideas, or odd ideas to us, but they're common to them. One of the things you probably don't know about the Japanese, and if you do know this about the Japanese, you'll never read manga the same again, or anime. The Japanese have a rape culture, as confusing as that is, as repugnant as rape is. They have a rape culture. They have a form of literature that talks about rape. Okay, now this is not that rape is accepted, because the Japanese don't do that. They don't really rape people. As a matter of fact, they get real upset if an American soldier rapes a Japanese girl. It's like they want to execute the guy right away. They get real upset if somebody rapes somebody. But it's part of their culture. Rape is part of their culture. Remember, they had samurai once upon a long time ago. If after the samurai killed all the other samurai, or after he killed all the males, or whatever he was doing, killed all the other soldiers, he would get his pick of which woman he wanted to have sex with. And it was kind of, and it was relatively brutal in intercourse. I guess I can say that. Okay. Okay, so if you go to Japan and you're riding on the bus, you'll see these little 12 and 13 and 14-year-old girls, maybe even 8 or 9 or 10-year-old girls, reading pornographic comic books. That's anime and manga. They're reading this stuff. And in there is a lot of forced sexual intercourse of one form or another, as confusing as that is. And there are all these little girls reading this stuff. And it's accepted practice that they read this stuff, as confusing as that is. So this really changes what you're seeing on, if you ever look at this stuff, it really changes the way you see things, because it's part of their culture. Over the summer, I read 3 Japanese novels. Boring, 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 boring. All of a sudden, sexual encounter that lasts about a page. Not a whole lot of romance involved. A lot of ejaculation. Not a whole lot of affection whatsoever. You know. And in all 3 of the novels, it was really kind of odd. So you're just reading along and nothing's really, well, there's stuff going on. Of course there's stuff going on. But all of a sudden they have this explosive sexual encounter with somebody that they didn't really care about. And then they finish the novel. One of them had 3 of those episodes in it. You know, it was really kind of odd, because in the United States you had this build up, you know. You'd have this build up and all of a sudden they would consummate their relationship, and then there's romance afterwards, and this lasts for a whole chapter. In Japanese novels, it lasts for a page. And after that, everything goes back to the same way it was before, as confusing as it is. Okay, so what we're talking about are different cultures and different ways of seeing things, right? This is cultural psychology. Okay, so when we're dealing with people from the Western world, their concept of sex may be completely different from people from another place, from Japan, for example. And this is one of the reasons why we have so much conflict. We have several bases in Japan. In Japan, Okinawa. What's the other place? What's the other place? Guam. Guam used to be Japanese. It's American now. Anyway, we have all these bases. We used to have Marine bases on. They got rid of all the Marine bases on Japan because the Marines kept raping Japanese women, and that's an unacceptable behavior. They literally want to take them out and execute them. And of course, the agreement that we have with the Japanese is that if an American soldier breaks the law in Japan, that he's tried in the United States. It's called the Forces Agreement. It's an agreement that we make with everybody. And this is the reason why we pulled out of Iraq, was because we couldn't, Status of Forces Agreement, that's what it's called. Status of Forces Agreement. We couldn't get them to agree to the Status of Forces Agreement. And so that's why we pulled out of Iraq, because they wouldn't, that's the only way we can protect our soldiers, right? Yeah, okay. Anyway, different cultures do things differently, including sex and including bathrooms. You can, if you really want to know, I'll tell you about the bathrooms, the toilets in Japan. They're not the same as American toilets. They're squat toilets. It's the oddest thing in the world.
Tell us.
Huh?
Tell us.
Oh, well, okay. Japanese toilets. I need something to draw with. Okay, here we go. Okay. A Japanese toilet. This is the floor. It's raised just a little bit, and then there's a hood right here, and then there's 2 places to put your feet. Okay. So in order to use a Japanese toilet, you literally have to squat on the ground. There's a hole back here, and that's for your waist. It's angled down, so if you're a male and you squat, of course, if you're female, you urinate straight down. But if you're a male, you shoot your urine into this thing and it runs down into the hole. Okay, but if you have to have a bowel movement, you know, there's a hole right here, and you're squatting down on these 2 foot pads, and that's what you're aiming for. You're aiming for that hole.
But do they have plumbing?
Yeah, there's a flushing mechanism. There's water that will run through this to clean it out. There's water up here, and there's water from this area right here. So it will wash it
And
down.
it would be easy for them because they can't be overweight, right?
Right, that's against the law. In
Yeah.
Japan, it's against the law to be overweight. Not only, they're relatively short. That's why I can drive the Miata and you guys can't. You're too tall. It fits me because I'm not a very tall person, but if I were taller, I couldn't fit. I had a friend that I took for a ride. He's like 6'4", and this is at Fort Belknap. And he got into my car, and I had to put the top down because his head stuck out about this far over the windscreen. It was really kind of odd. Anyway, yeah, that's a Japanese toilet. So it's a squat toilet. Now the reality is, Japanese forelimbs are longer than ours are. Their calves are shorter. So it's easier for them to squat than it is for us to squat. If we squat, we can't squat on our heels because our calves are too short. And our calves are too long and our foreleg is too short. Okay. So what you see, it's really odd because if you go to Korea, there's people waiting for the bus and they'll be squatted down on their heels. We can't do that. We can't do that because...
Is there like at least a panel? Is it like privacy, complete privacy?
No,
Or is
no,
it
no,
just...
no, of course not. Aren't we silly?
Well, like,
Smell?
Yeah, well, I think it does, but, you know, I didn't like the toilets in Germany.
Like in New York and San Francisco, they have like the public toilets just like right there next to a bus stop, or it really you can't avoid the smell. But it's like a little porta potty. You just
Okay.
you put your sense in, you open it, you
Right.
go, and then but it's like next to like this busy bus
That's
stop
right.
or like ferry or train. It's like right there and packed next to a bunch of people.
Paris has had those for centuries. They're called pisseries. Yeah, you put your quarter in and it's like
I
a
thought it
porta
was just gonna be like closed. Like,
Well, not in Japan. No, they don't do that. But they have public baths where everybody bathes together. Of course, you don't bathe to cleanse yourself. You cleanse yourself before you go into the bath. But it's like a big heated swimming pool. And everybody swims, I guess, or walks around. It's not very tall. It's only, well, they're shorter than that. So it's like this thing.
Like a hot spring?
Yeah, I guess. Except you don't have your clothes on. Yeah. Nobody wears clothes.
But nobody's fat there, you know.
Nobody's
so
fat there, everybody's skinny,
everybody's
yeah.
probably,
Yeah, it's against the law to be fat. As confusing as that is. Anyway, you want to know about German toilets? We deposit our waste in the water. Isn't that the way it works in American toilets? Yeah, right? Okay. German toilets don't look like that.
How about Hopi toilets?
Who?
Do you know anything about
I don't.
Hopi
I don't know.
toilets?
No.
Go ahead, Michelle, tell her.
No, they
Oh.
call, honestly, I'm not gonna
Okay, the German toilet looks just like an American toilet, except the only open area is right in front. And then there's a platform here, so you got your toilet. Okay, well, this is your toilet. This is a platform, and then this is the back of the toilet. So you sit here and you deposit your waste on this platform. It's on that, it's not in the water. So the odor is very obvious. Well, it's in the air. So you deposit your waste on this platform. Then when you flush the toilet, it washes that out. It washes it much better than American toilets. It always gets rid of the waste. But if you urinate here. If you're male, well, if you're female too. Well, females, you actually urinate on this platform. And there's just very little bit of water there. Why? I have no idea. That's the way their toilets are. All over Europe, you find these toilets. Of course, the French, they not only have a toilet, but they also have a bidet. And a bidet is to clean what didn't come off when you tried to wipe yourself or whatever. The bidet is for cleaning your nether regions of it. Toilets around the world, they're different. Different cultures. Sure, they can squat. I could never use one. For one thing, and I'm about the same size as they are, but my problem was that nothing fit right. And I couldn't squat quite right. And they're short. I mean, they're relatively short, but they're not very big people. So it was easy for them to utilize their toilets. I found them too small. I couldn't use them. I had to find an American toilet.
So the squatters, do they have a toilet in their house?
Yeah, that's the way their toilet. Well, you can imagine takes up a lot less room. In China, they have bathrooms where there's no shower. Well, there is a shower, but there's no covering. So you shower in the middle of the bathroom, and the whole thing is everything's porcelain or something. Anyway, yeah, it's just a hose that comes, and you just squirt yourself down, and there's a drain in the middle of the floor. They have a toilet, and their toilets look like American toilets, actually. Yeah. Interesting. You learned all about toilets and poop today, about how Koreans are so enamored with poop. Okay, all culture. Let's stop talking about poop and sex. In all cultures, people speak languages between 10 and 70 phonemes. Last time I taught this class, I asked how many phonemes are in the Dene vocabulary, and nobody knew. I don't know if people even talked about that. Does anybody have a clue? No? Okay. Not important. The most any culture has is 70. And a phoneme, of course, is just a sound that you make. Like be, say, de. That's a phoneme. So if you see in written, you pronounce the I, two phonemes, right? All has two phonemes as well. All. Cultures. Okay. you get me. Okay. Culture has you don't pronounce cultures. You pronounce the S, but you don't pronounce the E. Okay. So it's got like 6 phonemes. Culture, C-U. You pronounce the U. You pronounce the L. You pronounce the T. You pronounce the U in a way, and then you pronounce the R. Okay. And you pronounce the S. Okay. Those are phonemes. And this is the reason that people that speak English, well, Americans anyway, Canadians too, evidently they speak French with a horrible, horrible Canadian accent. According to the French anyway, I think it's funny. But the French have different vowel sounds than we have in English. So you have to practice these vowel sounds. And it's really difficult to make a vowel sound that isn't your native vowel sound, just to learn it when you're as old as I am. I could never speak French because the vowel sounds are different. They make them in different parts of their mouths. Just like Dene, of course, you hear somebody speak and I don't know, I was listening to Marius the other day talking to an individual, and he made sounds that I've never heard before. There are groups in Africa that use a click language, so there's a clicking sound after some of their phonemes. It's really kind of interesting.
I have a student, he's from Kenya,
Uh-huh.
and he said he got his English name when he was in 8th grade, which is Hosea. So he picked that name on him and his family.
Oh, okay.
But his real name is Yati.
Yati?
Yeah. So when he got here, everybody was saying, how do you know my name?
Well, that's interesting. When I took Spanish, I had to take a Spanish because there is no Bruce isn't a Spanish name, so I needed a Spanish name. And I selected Orlando. Orlando. You can call me Orlando if you like. That's my Spanish name. Just like he had to pick Jose, I guess. Is that was
Yeah.
his English name? So what does he use, Hosea or Yaakov?
Hosea.
Okay. It's interesting. In all cultures, people smile when they are happy. This is kind of interesting because as Westerners encroached more and more farther west, they came in contact with new groups of individuals that they'd never seen before, and they knew when they were in trouble, and they knew when they weren't in trouble because everybody smiles. Everybody smiles, except cowboys. No, that's not true. In all cultures, people have a word for the color black. So they know what black is. Everybody knows what black is. In all cultures, people are disgusted at the idea of incest between parents and their children. In all cultures. That's not acceptable anywhere. To anyone. Brothers and sisters, maybe. But never parents and their children. And even thinking about it makes Jeff's face wrinkle up. I know. How about the number 2? In all cultures, people understand the number 2. They understand 1 and they understand 2. Singular and they understand plural, I guess, to some extent. Some languages do not have a word for the color blue, even though the sky is blue. They all have a word for the color black, but not the color blue. People in some cultures are disgusted at the idea of incest between cousins, whereas people in other cultures are not so much. It's really kind of interesting because this culture is that's not right. There are a lot of taboos about who you can and can't talk to or date or anything. I mean, your whole clan system is constructed so that this never occurs. Cousins never have anything to do with each other. And what do you refer to those individuals as? The first time I heard this, I'm going, I don't understand. Cousin brother, cousin sister, you know, this is my cousin, but I feel that they are like my brother or sister, which makes a lot of
what's
sense.
strange is my husband, his family, okay, his grandma's kids, he calls them his aunties and uncles. But up north, I would call them my cousins.
Right.
And I keep telling him they're your cousins, and he's like, no, that's my auntie, my uncle.
Right.
So with my son, you know, he says, my auntie, my uncle. I'm like, who is your auntie and uncle? And I'm like, yeah. It's just crazy.
Fascinating, isn't it? It's a different culture, and it's a different way of looking at things. But you're looking at relatives. You guys have lots of relatives. I have a lot of relatives too, but I don't like any of them. So this gets really confusing. That's why I'm here instead of up in Indiana with my relatives. It was interesting because I was, as I told you, somebody's car broke down and I had to help. I was helping, and his uncle came over. I told you about the whole hugging thing.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I don't know if he was actually his uncle or not. Not as far as where I come from. I don't know if he would be his uncle, but he called him his uncle, so I assume he was his uncle. I was helping him with his broken car. So cousins, you know, and this is different everywhere. It's different in every culture. The French see it one way, the Germans see it another way, the English see it another way. The Irish and the Scottish don't see it the same as the English do. So they consider the Irish and the Scottish as inbred because they don't have the same strictures that they do in England, as you can imagine. Where I come from, we make fun of people that live in Kentucky and Tennessee as if they were inbred because they marry their cousins. And where I come from, in Indiana, we don't do that. We don't marry first cousins. We don't marry second cousins if we can get away from them. Personally, I would never have married any of my ugly cousins anyway. So, there you go. I know, that's a problem. Okay, we're talking about the mind being intertwined with your culture. I got 3 minutes. A female student going out for coffee might mean for that student, if she goes out for coffee, I mean lots of people go out for coffee, people go out all the time. If there's a Starbucks in the area, if you're a coffee drinker, you go out for coffee, it's okay, right? If you're a female, you can go alone to the coffee shop, to Starbucks, or wherever you're going and buy coffee. Is that okay in your culture, Jeff? To buy coffee? Can a woman go and buy coffee all by herself? Okay. It's okay. It's all right. You're going to be okay. It's a chance for her to quench her thirst, right? She's thirsty. She needs some coffee. It's a demonstration that she has quit her diet because she's probably going to have a muffin or a scone or something. She's off her diet. It's an effort to wake herself up so that she can study. That caffeine in that coffee. Are we doing okay here? Does everybody agree this is a good thing? This is okay? It's an opportunity to pursue a romantic partner if she wants. I mean, you meet, where are you going to meet your romantic partners anyway? Coffee shop is as good as any place, isn't it? Meet them at the gym, meet them in church. Try to stay away from the bar. You never know what happens next. But a coffee shop, nobody's drunk. Well, probably. So it's okay, right? So romance that flowers in a coffee shop is not a bad thing. Well, not all cultures are the same. In some other cultures, women going to a coffee shop on her own, it's not appropriate for her to go by herself. People in her culture do not strive for ideal body weights, so considering yourself too fat is a negative. It is considered sinful to seek artificial stimulants to obtain energy. Romantic relationships are typically arranged by family members. So if you live in Saudi Arabia, you can't do this. There are people in the United States that do not drink stimulants because it's against their religion. Right? Do we know who these people are? Do you know who these people are?
Mormons.
Mormons. Yeah. They don't drink alcohol. They don't drink caffeine. They don't drink coffee. They don't drink Mountain Dew, which I find just obscene. How can you stay away from caffeine? How can you stay away from Mountain Dew is actually what I'm trying to say. Anyway, yeah, the Mormons don't drink any stimulants at all. Okay, why don't we stop right here? We'll pick this up next time. I thought I was going to get through this whole thing, but Jeff had to see Gangnam Style, so it's Jeff's fault. As you're going to find out, Jeff has joined our class, and he has allowed us to keep this class, and I appreciate that. But